on episode 8 of Convergence, asking for permission to help when the person is not necessarily ready to listen, and our continued paths to becoming healers and helpers.
I saw something on Netflix that I haven't actually watched, but it made me think of you and your the project you're starting and the flow you're getting into. John Baptiste?
Yeah, the wrestler guy? No, that's Dave Bautista. John Baptiste, no, I'm not sure if I do.
He's like the main musician, the guiding musician on one of the late night shows, I think, with Stephen Colbert. And he writes a lot of Grammy award-winning music and stuff. And he has a new movie on Netflix called American Symphony. And it's like about him going through the process of like winning Grammys for his music while his wife is dealing with like really bad cancer, and like the back and forth between the realness of sickness and the craziness of being a huge celebrity in music, and also the creation process and how he's using the music creation process to deal with these both sides and stuff. And it looked pretty heart-wrenching.
Ooh, yeah. I don't think I'm ready for that.
Yeah, I agree.
What made you think of me?
Using art as a tool for growth and release, and yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah. So I sent you a little thing this week. I recorded myself. Do we want to talk about that? Before or after we put it on the feed?
I think we should put it on the feed. And dear listener, you will have seen both episodes drop. So I think our advice to you is go and listen to, if you haven't listened to the Divergence episode, then go and listen to that now, and then come back and we'll resume from here.
Yeah, just I had a moment where I had to get some stuff out, where I'm talking and thinking about this path I want to go down and how it's affecting me. And I've spoken to Margaret about it since then, and Cameron, my friend, and I realized that I'm not processing and handling external factors the way I probably should. And one of the things that came up with Margaret, this isn't her words, but the kind of the message that I received was, I don't even know. It's not even her words or message, maybe, but what kind of came to mind was like, maybe I'm really handling things wrong. I care too much about people. I'm letting them affect me too much. These are all the wrong words. But what's been interesting for me since then is that I listened to a book that, man, we could go on a whole episode about me talking about this book. This is crazy. It's called Spirit Hacking by Shaman Durek. And wow. I had to do some learning about shamanism. I had to do some. I realized that I had all this stuff that I was feeling so much for my friends, feeling so much for humanity, and I needed some help, kind of calibrating that, and so I found this book, and I just actually searched for shaman in my library audiobook app, and that one came up, and it was immediately available. And I was like, okay, listen into this, and wow, that was an experience. It was like more than half the book it felt like I had written it myself, and it was It was a lot like the manifesto that I shared with you, which we could also get into. It was a lot. It was a lot like stuff that I have felt throughout my life, but didn't even think to write it down or say it. And it was just like, oh, that's why I feel this way. Like it made me feel like this has been a path for me my entire life, and I just didn't even know it was a thing. Whereas he came from like 5 generations of shamans. For me, I came from people who were completely out of touch, very blocked, very ego-based, and somehow I have been able to break free from that a little bit and open up. And now my mind is like, this is your path. And so I just now I know I have a lot of lessons to learn. I mean, I already knew I had a lot of lessons to learn, but anyways, that Divergence recording was a wake-up call for me a bit. Like, I think Margaret even used the term "cry for help." And I can see that, and I guess it is a little bit since I'm sending it out to people. But it's also like, also at the same time, I feel like it's like no, I got this. But yeah, so you've heard it. I'm really curious. You told me you had thoughts, and boy, do I want to hear them. I'm really excited.
I think chief among the observations that I had, I think, particularly towards the end, because we can talk about, because there's a lot of stuff here around your friends and you wanting / hoping, wishing that your friends would do certain things, walk certain paths.
One bit I want to say about that is I think it came off. It did come across as me wanting to change them, and really, truly, I really don't. I don't want to change anybody. I don't want to force anything. I don't want that it's me doing anything. Like, I don't want credit. I don't want to force. I really just want people to wake up. I really just want people to click out of their ego, to know that there is something other than the rut they're in. And that, I don't think that came across in the recording.
I think it's interesting that, and I want to make the point here that there's, these are 2 gentlemen here who are not necessarily trained in psychology, and if this gets a little bit pop psychology, then, dear listener, like, feel free to roll your eyes all the way back into the back of your head, and call us out as well. Was it convergencepod@icloud.com?
That sounds great. Yes,
I think
convergencepod@icloud.com. Yes, email us and tell us exactly what you think.
What I sort of hear in what you were saying is there is a judgment there that people are in ruts, and I don't know if it's our place, and I don't mean this from a judgmental point of view either, from judging you, but I don't know if if we can see other people's ruts, because we really don't know. We haven't walked in their shoes, and so I think there's potentially a danger that I know what you mean about, we can observe decisions that we think aren't necessarily the healthiest or the most productive or the best, but I think that's different from saying this person is in a rut or this person has these things that need to change about them. I think that is where we get into. And again, it's right back to, I think, episode 1 of this, where we talk about the zealousness or the zeal of the converted, and yeah. So when I hear that, I hear a sort of, not a judgment in sense of you're good or bad, or the people you're observing are good or bad. It's not that. It's not judging them in that sense, but a judgment of their situation, and a sense that there's almost a suggestion that you've got a better idea of their situation than they have, and I think that's maybe where some of that can be a bit tricky, because if it feels like it's coming from that place of like, I did this healing, I walked this path, therefore this is the path that you should walk as well.
Right. And and that's I get that. And I have a lot of thoughts about that. For one, I don't want anybody to walk the same path as me. I definitely know that my path is mine and not anyone else's. But I do see that everyone does have a path. And I don't see that everyone knows that they have a path. And and it's not just what I see in their actions. It's energetically what I feel. And this is the part where I feel like I do have nebulous, hard to describe energetic gifts. Kind of like Lacey talks about her clairvoyance. I can't Claire.
Yeah, there's another word that she uses, isn't there? I think. Yeah,
it's a different one. Like thoughts just come to her. For me, I have feelings that come to me. Like I can. Sometimes I can see auras, but I don't see them visually. I feel them. I feel the color around somebody, which is really odd. It's disorienting. It's kind of jarring, and I can feel when somebody's like kind of not in their best path and not in their best, in sort of some sort of rut and some sort of early stage of life, when they have gotten to the point where they could have discovered another path by now, or another part of their life by now. And I'm not here like trying to bump every wagon out of its rut and trying to shift, like I don't want to like go out of my way. I'm not trying to do anything more. But when I see my friends and family in that situation, and I'm here every day with them, and it's like, I'm just watching them hurt themselves is how it feels. It's really hard, and I want to say something, and I actually kind of, in a way, kind of feel like it is my place. Like it's not everyone's place to call everybody out, but I think that there might be certain people who it is their place to call people out, and because maybe people wouldn't ever change or grow or get to the next stage if they didn't have a prompt from somebody that they trusted. So I have to earn that trust. I have to play that role correctly. But I could be somebody's change agent. I don't know.
Yes, I believe that. What I think is tricky, and I think this is endlessly frustrating to feel that way, because
it sure is. I mean, I love it. I love it, but also it's really hard.
Yeah, and I can understand that. I have the same thing when it comes to, in a professional setting. I see. I get really sort of triggered and annoyed by bad advice. And I heard a piece of bad advice a couple of days ago, and I actually recorded this little voice note of me reacting to someone's bad advice.
Oh, I love it.
By just going, "No, Neil, no, no, Neil, no, Neil, no." Because it's frustrating. And then when you hear bad advice being acted out or enacted upon, it is, you just want to reach in and say, no, there's a better way. As someone who has flogged a horse or two that are near death, if not actually dead, you can't, and if we stick with the horse analogy, you can't lead a horse. You can lead a horse towards it, but you can't make it drink, right? It's and I actually think I might have brought this up in a future, giving the game away now that I do record my daily show in advance. because how else would I do it? But anyway,
Wait, it's not live.
I think
as I'm listening to the podcast.
Yeah. I think it did come up, this whole notion of wanting to be able to change something, but having the question: is it my task? You know, is this my task? And I think you can offer, you can ask, you can invite, but man alive, that is a third rail. And I screwed that up earlier in the year. Like, I brought someone to tears by asking what I thought was an invitation kind of question, not one that came from you should change. Now, I was playing with fire because that's not the right phrase. I was playing in a space that I didn't have enough experience in, and wasn't careful enough and tactful enough, because the person I was speaking to was extremely sensitive and extremely self-conscious, and the questions I was asking that I thought were coming from a helpful place were just hurting each time. It's really hard, because sometimes it just comes from this, wanting to know what choices people make, wanting to know, and I think you mentioned in the recording that for some people it's just one or two simple little changes, and it feels like it could fix so much. And I think it's what I think would be healthier for you, and I genuinely mean it from a point of view of your own mental health.
Yeah.
Because too much of this is just, it's not good. It is to find a way to be okay with the fact that they're not ready, or they don't want that help.
Yeah. 100%.
You can't help someone who doesn't want it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I just, and I understand you taking on this role of this person who can, but I think all you can do is offer questions or offer things for people to think about. And then when you sense that resistance, I think you just got to pull back, because you can push people away by trying to help them too much.
Yeah.
In a way that they're not ready for.
Yeah. Oh no, that happened with my sister. Yeah. Yeah. I was really sad about kind of how her, she put a boundary that she didn't want to hear any more of that stuff, and I got really sad about it, and then asked her if she would talk to me about the boundary. And in that discussion, we kind of we did ask questions of each other. It was a discussion and not a dictation, but it was clear that I had stuff that I wanted to say, and she was gripping her hands tightly and just trying to bear through it, just like, okay, tell me what you got to say. Just like super closed, but like just being there to like accept it. And so I said some things that she was in no place to hear. But I was like, I feel like I need to say these things. You're telling me that you're accepting it, willing to hear it. And so I said the things, and it's been a silent treatment since then. It's been like 6 months, 8 months, something like that.
I'm gonna say something that I want to be sensitive about. But that phrase, 2 words that you said there, I heard a lot in the recording of, and I've got a sort of a follow-up question for this as well, which is the 2 words were I need.
I need. It's all about me.
A little bit. Or could it be?
For sure.
You needed to say these things.
Yes.
Did the other person need to hear them?
I mean, yeah, that's where I'm at, and definitely no, and not at that time. And
I'm not here saying there's a right or wrong answer. I'm just
sure.
I'm just asking the question.
You're asking great questions. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I did need to say it, and no, she did not need to hear it at that time. I'm obviously in the opinion that she does need to hear it, because I mean, from my point of view, there's not just her and me in this equation, there's a little one. And I'm seeing patterns repeat that caused a lot of trauma. I'm seeing things that are very, very scary for the little one, and he's going to have, I want really good for him, and I want for good for her, and I want good for me, of course. But I was willing to take the chance on our relationship in order to plant a seed that, no matter how bitter, no matter how disruptive it could be, that it could germinate. Maybe somebody else waters it. Maybe, a storm comes in and waters it. Maybe something happens and that grows into something. And maybe she comes back to me and says, "Hey, I didn't like what you said, but I've been thinking about it." I don't know. But it wouldn't happen, and I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't. At that time, where I was, which was not in a healthy spot, I've worked a lot on myself since then because of, and also, I needed to say that at that time to her to get her reaction to grow myself. That was very traumatic for me. And I have since learned a lot about how to talk to people and how to talk to my sister, and how, and that I need to investigate how I talk to people. I needed to stumble in that way in order to do it better next time.
One of the things that I'm learning is, and I'm trying to practice it, and I managed a couple of weeks ago with someone, and I'm glad that I asked the question. I think we, as people who want to help people, we actually, I think we have to ask permission first. And we don't always. And, I did this with a friend a couple of weeks ago. I was like, "Can I ask you a coaching question? A coachy style question." And, she said yes. And then she said, "Thank you for asking."
Yeah, I've been getting the same kind of thing. I'm in an addiction group of people, and we share in a circle, and it's all supposed to be confidential, and there's a talking time afterwards, and I'm like, "Hey, do you mind if I make a comment or something about what you shared today?" And so far everybody said yes, but that's the door. That's me asking to be let in, not me just saying, "Hey, I got a couple things to say." And it's always been better. It's always been a good conversation when I have asked first. And yeah. And honest, I will say that bit with my sister, when we went to the park and I talked with her, I did ask her, like, I didn't trick her into coming to the park with me. It was a couple days of setup. Like, I asked her, like, "Hey, I'd really like to talk to you about this. Can we set aside a time?" And so, there was a little bit of that, but also it was clear. And I'm not trying to excuse myself from the fact, knowing that her body language was of a tense wild animal, fearful that something is going to attack them, and every muscle is tight and completely resistant to hearing anything that I was going to say. And I knew that, but I proceeded anyway.
Well, it's not my job, and it's not your job to litigate the past. So, yeah. But I guess there's a grieving to be done about perhaps a bit of the relationship and that kind of stuff. But that would be not my place. It's clear that you have lots of love to give. But I think, one of the things that I noted down is seeing pain and maybe some grief, and also I wondered about how much of this feels like it's come about or has become more prevalent after the crash?
Oh, interesting question. I mean, I feel a bit like, well, okay. What happened right before I recorded that was I heard some really tragic news about, not tragic's a bit overblown. Some sad news about a friend and their health. It came down with something really strong, and it's affecting them, and it's affecting me. And I realized at the time, before I did the recording, and especially since, after talking to Margaret, that I don't regulate myself enough, boundarying myself from other people's problems, and I do let it affect me. But also, I know that I'm not ever going. I don't want to ever block that off completely, because it's my kryptonite and it's my superpower. It's like I love feeling that connection to other people. I just need to learn to regulate it better. Like I think I talked about in the recording, I used to take headaches from my ex-wife just by placing my hand on her forehead, and then I would feel exactly in my head where that headache was, and I would be left with that headache for the next 15, 30 minutes. And I, over time, learned to be able to take the headache without feeling it myself. And that's just another thing that I need to learn to do with knowing somebody else's pain, but not taking it on myself. I don't know if since the crash, if that's changed. I think maybe a little bit, like kind of in my life, I just kind of feel like a little bit more motivated to do what I'm called to do. Since then, I'm like, I have a new lease on life. It's amazing that I'm even alive after that crash. But I also kind of feel a new vigor and zeal for it since we started this podcast. And, since I've read this book and that book, and it feels like everything in my life is falling into place. This manifestation challenge, there's another part of it. Like it's just things are, dominoes are just lifting themselves up right in front of me, and I'm just able to just plop, plop, plop each one down, and it's it all feels like my life is playing out in front of me, like it's behind, like it's already written, like it's not in a that could be a horrible scenario where I feel like I have no control, but it feels like it's everything I want, even though it's happening to me right in front of me. But it's everything that I want it to be. So it's kind of the best case of fate, the best case of predestination.
It's interesting you say control, because that's what I was wondering about, because you and Margaret both encountered a moment of supreme loss of control. And it was clear from the visceral description that you gave towards the end of the recording of your fears, and that was really affecting. And that it feels like that's still alive for you. And there's some trauma, there's some fear, there's some all sorts of stuff bundled up, and it feels like at the moment, maybe, I don't know, but is it possible that is trying to escape through other people, through healing other people? And that's why I wondered, whether this sort of, because obviously it's compounded by a couple of things. You've heard the news of your friend. You've had a lot of upheaval in the last couple of weeks, and that's a loss of control. That's a loss of things that you just can't do anything about. Plus, there's just there's also this sense of if only people would listen, that, like, that you could, heal and make things better. But
oh yeah,
at the severe risk of it all sounding psychobabbly, that's not something you can provide to yourself, and that's maybe something that you need.
That's interesting. I love that question about loss of control, because actually what I just described about things falling into place in front of me is also completely loss of control. I have it's what I want. It happens to be what I want, but also I really feel like I have almost no hand in it. Like, I'm sure I'm writing down in my manifestation journal, and I'm doing the DIs, and I'm working, using other, I'm trying to use the mystic path and the shaman path and all these other things to guide my future. But a lot of things happen that just feel like they are the universe doing it, or whatever. It's just life happening in front of me, the accident included. Like, I'm gonna get really real with you for a sec. The accident, man, super freaking traumatic. Also, some kind of cool things happened because of it. Like, it was not just a curse. There's also blessings. It gave, for one, it gave me a renewed sense of vigor in life. Like, I'm happily feeling like I'm reawoken. In the moment, we were surrounded by community, and I hadn't really had that feeling of strangers coming to my aid and being there for me ever. I've always kind of felt really alone in this, and in life, and in my place in America, my place in my town. Like the 2020 race riots here in Portland, like I was down there every day, trying to give out snacks and being with people, and like I felt like I was playing a role and being helpful, but not connected with anybody. I didn't sit and have conversations. I didn't connect with nearly some people, who are extroverts. They came up to me and like, "Oh, hey, this is really cool. You're doing this and that." And then we talked for like 3 minutes, and then they move on. And otherwise, I'm just handing out water bottles, and that's not a real connection. That's fleeting. But right after the crash, there was a woman that was slack-jawed in a car that just it happened in front of her, and she's like, "Are you okay? Wow, that was incredibly whoa." And then there were 3 witnesses that came forward and then just stayed with us, and just like told us their stories and listened to our stories of what just happened. And there was this guy that was kind of stereotypically like a scary homeless guy. He was missing his front teeth, and he was kind of like very dirty and stuff. And he was just the kindest, gentlest, most wonderful, like jolly person. He was kind of yelling at the cops for us because they didn't go after the guy, and we were joking, and that was amazing for me. Like, and I wouldn't have gotten that if I hadn't had that traumatic experience. And another thing is like, yeah, I have this injury, and I have a whole bunch of things I have to do now because of it. And I have all this time is taken up from insurance calls and buying a new car and going to acupuncturists and chiropractors and physical therapy and other healthcare practitioners. And it's like a full-time job. But also, like, we're gonna get a decent a paycheck at the end of this. Like, we're gonna get some money from it, which is, I wouldn't pay that, or I wouldn't buy this pain, but that is something that's going to come in, and that's going to make things better for us. I'm going to pay off debts, and we're going to kind of set up some investments, and it's hard to say that I'm happy about it. it's hard to say it, but I kind of am. This is me trying to be as real as possible. Like I was already finding it hard to work. Because of other health issues, because of other things. It was hard to get out into the field and physically remodel stuff. And now it's kind of impossible for me to do that for the short term. And I wasn't going to be able to make a lot of money during that time. And now I'm going to be making more money than I would have if I was working. Maybe, probably. We'll find out how good my lawyer is. But I can't remember why we went down that road. But like that's been something that's been a weird feeling for me to sit through of the duality, the good and the bad of this very traumatic event. Like I wouldn't ever ask for it, but because I got it, I'm trying to recognize all aspects of it, and I'm almost thankful. Like I'm great. I mean, honestly, that's been something that's taken years and years and years for me to come to, being grateful for the fibromyalgia, and I am. Like if it wasn't for that persistent pain that would never go away, I wouldn't have continued what my ex-wife pushed into me of trying to better myself. She prompted me to read these books and read them to me and go to therapies and stuff. And she did it in a horrible, abusive fashion, but opened my eyes to something that was there that I didn't realize. And then after she was gone, I continued with it only when my health made me. Like otherwise, I was still stuck in my pattern. If I was numbing myself out enough with all the sugar and caffeine and tubs of ice cream, or the sugar-free ice cream that I thought I was getting away with, once I kind of snapped out of that and realized, like, no, this pain isn't going away on its own. I have to do some work to get rid of this. That work that I had to do helped me in so many ways. And now I'm really grateful that pain never left, so that I could have a reason to keep working on myself. Because now I'm at this point where I've worked on myself so much, and I see life in such a different fashion. I feel awoken. Like I feel like the Buddha. I feel like a shaman, a man who knows. And it's a different world. It's hard to describe. That's what, like Alan Watts tries to do with his poetry, and Ram Dass tries to do with his very flowery and delicious, but very hard to approach musings and guidance. It's all very unapproachable from somebody who's stuck in their ego. To that effect, Margaret and I are reading this book that Unique recommended to me, and
this is Unique Hammond.
Yeah, Unique Hammond, the health coach and podcaster. It's called "The Mystic Path to Cosmic Power" by Vernon Howard, and it's so weird. It's simultaneously also hard to really get into, because the language it was written in the 70s, I think, and it's very the language is very of its time and kind of silly and kind of funny, but at the same time it's super approachable, because he shows you the path to wake up in very simple steps. The first step is just being aware of yourself. Just watch yourself. Just bring your attention to no judgments, no analysis, just observation, just pure awareness, and just keep working on that. Work on that for a month. Just keep, anytime, just bring your attention back to yourself. Just watch what you're doing, because people don't watch what they're doing. It's an epidemic, in my opinion, and those of people I follow. And There's a quote I pulled from The Mystic Path that I think might be relevant. He says, "I've investigated every teacher and system, from Aristotle to Apollinarianism to Zeno to Zen. The teaching is varied in outer form, but all agreed on the essentials. Man's task is to awaken to his true identity. The kingdom of heaven is within. Spiritual truths are discovered with an entirely new kind of thinking, quite distinct and vastly superior to the mind that builds bridges and sells merchandise. End quote. From the perspective of a person who is, I feel, waking up. I know I have much to learn and everything, but from the other side, the grass is greener.
This feels like a good place to leave it. This is going to be part one of our discussion. Things take an interesting and fun and maybe silly turn in the second part of our conversation. So join us next week for episode 9, where we start turning the telescope the other way around and start looking at the world through a very different lens.